Well, welcome everybody to Thought Leader Friday with North Carolina Association of Realtors President Maren Brisson Kuester. We're excited to have her here today. Debbie's going to drive the bus on the interview for us. So Debbie, say hi and let's get things kicked off, shall we?
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in today. We are so excited to have Maren with us. She's been attending some legislative meetings and then keeping us up to date with all things real estate. So we're super excited to be talking with her today. So Maren, give us a little insight to who you are and your background in real estate.
Well, as of now, I'm about to be a newly minted 41-year-old single mom of 2 boys, and I've been doing real estate for a really long time. I started about 20 years ago and really came in and had a desk, a phone book, and a pat on the back and said good luck. And that was how I started my job and my career that I love so much in real estate. It started at Realtors, which at that time was and it still to this day carries the crown of the first female-owned company in real estate, female-owned real estate company in the state, and in Charlotte as well. It was a great place to call home, and it merged with Cunningham Chalk right after the downturn, the Great Recession we all called it. And I was there until about 1.5 years ago when I came over with my good friend Valerie Mitchner over here at HM to be COO for her and help run this company and grow it. And it's been a wild ride. I love real estate, and I ate a lot of ramen noodles when I first started my career in my early 20s. But now I can look back at a couple decades and really appreciate who and what we are and how we help contribute to our communities. So it's been a great pleasure to serve people in our communities in real estate.
That's great. What roles have you held within your local board or now president within the state?
Well, I've held a multitude of roles in my day. I started in leadership development program in 2005, so just a couple years into real estate. I came in really as the new generation. When I started, the average age of the realtor was almost 60. And when I started at my firm, I refused to follow the rules. I didn't wear pantyhose. I didn't wear closed-toed shoes. I didn't do any of the stereotypical things that at that point in time we were expected to do. So in came the new era, and I was not alone. And so I was joined in leadership over the last 15 years with a bunch of my peers. And I was honored to serve as the Charlotte president. I got the BOGO year, so I served as president there for 2 years. And I was president as well over the large regional MLS, the education arm, and the Housing Opportunity Foundation. So that was a really great way to give back to our industry and our community as well. And then moved through the ranks at state and national, found myself on exec for state, and then clearly as now your president and head of the leadership team this year at the state. And then for the last several years, actually for almost the last decade, I've been a board of director for NAR and various roles. For most of that, I served as a seat for the largest city in the state association of Charlotte. That's where I'm from and continue to live and practice. And so I sat there for about 6-7 years in that role, and now I serve as the state representative and will continue for the next 5 and serve on finance at NAR as well. So that's been a pretty big lift this week as we've gone into our virtual meetings at NAR.
Yeah. And what I like our listeners to understand is, there are so many facets within real estate, and a lot of times we get stuck in that. We go out and we sell homes and we work with buyers, and sometimes we transition into running teams and leading teams, and then often into running and leading brokerages. And so you've taken that part of it, been a top producer, a single mom, plowing your way through the ranks of real estate, and have incorporated that legislative or political side into your business as well, which is hugely important. And I can say that I served on a local board here in Wilmington for 4 years, met some amazing people, were able to make some great changes within a new MLS and that sort of thing. So being involved, I think, is one of those things that sometimes with the day-to-day we tend to overlook. And that's why another reason I'm excited that you're here today, just to share things that you're hearing and ways people can get involved. So what do you see as the greatest challenges for realtors today in the industry, as well as with COVID? And then we're going to tag that to also, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for realtors today?
Well, so many things. So I'll run with what you mentioned just a moment ago first. I think you've got to get involved. It's a great opportunity. I don't just practice, but I walk it and I preach it and I live it every day. You have to be involved. My great analogy is I'd rather be at the table versus on the table. And now is a pivotal time for us in our livelihoods and in our industry. And so that rolls me right into the challenges. I think the greatest challenge in life in general is, what do you do with the unknown? What do you do with change and turmoil? And we are facing a reality. We all need to. I mean, we have to get with it, right? We have to understand that we really are the last industry left undisrupted. And we are being disrupted. We are in the middle of it right now. Now, where do we end up with that? I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. If I did know, I'd certainly be a lot wealthier than I am right now. But what I can tell you is change is coming, and we have to be engaged in that change, and it's going to look very different. And so I view COVID, albeit a disaster and something that none of us have ever dealt with, mostly in our lifetime. Most people who survived the last great pandemic in 1918 are not here any longer, really. And if they are, they might not even remember it. So this is a challenging time, but I also find it an opportunity for us, because it's pushed a lot of us out of our comfort zones completely. Because reality is I'm not the young one in the business anymore. And so that means most of us, if not all of us, having this conversation right now, we are not the young ones anymore. And what is that going to do to our industry? And what does, by the way, our client base that we serve? It's changing, and its demographics being redefined daily almost. What does that look like for us? And I'd say that it looks like a very different practice of real estate than we all know and love. I don't think talking to people is going to go away. Of course it's not. Our job is people, right? So that won't change. But the way we service them will, and the way we market properties absolutely will. And I think COVID has forced us to do that. I've seen more virtual, legitimate virtual tours, not what all of us call virtual tours, which are still photos strung together and run, but legitimate 3D, 4D tours of homes, not just Matterport, but various other kinds of software. I think that's really neat and innovative, by the way. I think that if somebody can pick up Google Glasses or whatever other virtual reality headgear you have right now and walk through the house and think they're in the house, I think that's amazing technology. And that's just one thing that we're all starting to do and see. So if you just look at it as the tip of the iceberg, I think what's yet to come for our industry is exciting, and we all need to embrace it and roll with it, because there's so much more below the surface that I think is coming. And I'll tell you, if we don't harness it, what you worry about will come true. You will have no job, because within 5 years, if we are not all practicing real estate very differently, we will not have our bricks and mortar offices. We will not be here. So I think that it is not a time to sit back and just do nothing. I think it's time to reinvest in yourself. I did. I mean, I continue to, because while I still help run the association and this company that I work at, I also run my own brokerage business. I still broker. I'm actively brokering, and that matters, right? And so I have to market brokerage services in some capacity to my client base. And how am I going to do a better job of brokering, by the way? And how am I going to get all my 100+ brokers who work here to do a better job of marketing themselves and their properties? And so those are the challenges now that you see in different roles, not necessarily just doing brokerage on your own, but in any role that you may be finding yourself in. I think it's your greatest challenge, but your greatest opportunity to grow and change and ride the wave versus crash underneath it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one thing, when we were talking earlier this week, we were discussing that, right now the NAR legislative committee meetings are underway, and I know you were gracious enough to hop on today with all of that going on this week and next week, so we're grateful for that. What are some of those things that you're hearing or discussing in relation to COVID and changes in realtors' business and that sort of thing, that are things that we should be looking out for?
Well, a number of things. I mean, we actually haven't stopped since about mid-March. Literally, when I tell you your state and national governance staff has really not slept, it's legitimate. And I'm included in a lot of that. So I'm telling you, at 2:30, 3 in the morning, things are still occurring. It is incredible. And your presence as a body of realtors has been known throughout all local parts of the state, the local organizations, and if you didn't have them, the state did it as well, fought locally to make sure real estate was essential and we could still protect our clients. At the state level, we did as well, and we've also worked on funding packages and relief packages for small businesses and to help communities going on that have all passed. Electronic notaries, for example, things that will help us continue to survive. That's all passed at the state this week. We had a hand in that. And most people, if not everyone, has heard about all the federal relief packages that have come out. And NAR had a massive presence at that negotiating table. And you saw it every which way. You saw it helping our members who, for the first time ever, could file for unemployment as a self-employed person, right? To navigating PPP applications. How do we do that? When NAR and the state helped process and get information through to people and help them understand how to apply for everything in the CARES Act, right? The emergency loan, the grants, you name it, they've had a hand in it. So it's been a really busy time, and a time where I believe more than ever people understand the value of their associations, frankly, and RPAC dollars. And people don't ever tie those two together in a time of crisis, but I've seen firsthand the power of RPAC and what they have done to help our members through this crisis, and I'll never forget it. And it's been a message that has beaten at every capital very strongly and clearly for us, and I feel like we've had a lot of wins. So people definitely need to pay attention to the emails that are coming out right now. They're not just something you swipe left on and ignore. These are things that you need to read, and if it's long-winded, it's because you need to know it all. We're helping you stay in business. We're helping you get better educated and provide potential income for your family that you didn't even know you had access to. So quite a lot going on.
Yeah. And I can see just locally too, several of the things like, well, so with North Carolina, we're typically heinies and chairs for pre-licensing courses, CE courses on update, and a lot of that has transitioned to be allowable via Zoom, and take the classes and all of that via Zoom. And then also the designations have come out to where you can take the designation for free and it counts CE. Yep. So there's a lot of changes that you guys, and I'm sure every state varies. At the same time, like Maren's saying, stay in touch with what your state's doing with some things that way, because when you look at these designations, if you have a little extra time and it's something you've always wanted, you take it for free online, like take advantage of that. So just being abreast of what's going on. Now, another thing that I know that came out just on May 1st, so last week, is the clear cooperation that came into play with MLSs and having more restrictions on making sure those listings are in MLS before marketing and that sort of thing. How do you see that impacts us as realtors, and what are the pros and cons of the new rule?
Well, the impact and the base rule, if you want to boil it down, do not market outside of your firm if you are going to have a pocket listing. If you do, it must go in your MLS. Now, depending on your local MLS, the rules are all slightly nuanced and different. on how quickly they need to go into the MLS, fines for noncompliance, etc. So clearly check with your local MLS. But the base rule again is do not market your property outside of your firm, or it must go into the MLS system. Plain and simple. And that is going to cause some ripple effects and some confusion. You do have clients, we've all more than likely had at least one or two that did not want their property marketed for whatever reason. Safety, maybe they were a professional athlete, getting traded, didn't want anyone to know, something crazy even, right? Who knows? But they happen. They no longer can do that unless they stay within your own firm. So pros and cons, there are a lot of them on both sides. And I don't know how valuable it is to you to go through them all, but what I can tell you is it's here to stay. It's not changing. This rule is not going away. So what we all must do is figure out a way to market our properties effectively while still stay in legal compliance with our fiduciary responsibility to our clients. And so I would tell you that that's a challenging paradigm to sit in slightly with Clear Cooperation. It was an almost unanimous vote at NAR's board meeting when this passed. I was one of a handful that voted against it, not because I don't believe in the premise. I do believe in the premise, and I do believe that this rule helps with fair housing, which is extremely important. And we all must be more cognizant of fair housing issues as they arise. So I think had they not made certain exceptions to this rule, it would have done a better job of that. What this has done, right, wrong, or indifferent, has allowed a much larger company to market to more people and more consumers. I'm not certain how that exception of staying within the firm helped protect with fair housing, but ultimately I'm not the judge of that. The public is. So time will tell. But that's really what we all have to be cognizant of and be careful. And I caution everyone to make sure they understand their local rules on this. And if not, get some clarity, because this will be something that carries a fine pretty much in every market.
Yeah, and that's what we've been seeing locally. So here's one of those topics that we as realtors discuss and wonder about, but never have any clear direction on. So the MLS, we've heard things like upstream fast, and the MLS could go away, the MLS could stay. We are locally seeing, and I shared this with you, where we've gone to regional MLS to where there are fewer MLSs in our state, and we can join various MLSs as long as our company joins the outreach. You know, we could, here in Wilmington, we could go join Charlotte's MLS as long as our company would allow it. So what are you seeing as the future of MLS?
Well, I think it's going to be very different in a few years. We are shrinking in numbers of MLSs. In a few short years, we've cut that number in half. That's significant, and it's going to continue to be that trend. I believe in the end, we're probably going to have maybe 30 very large regional MLSs. That's just my prediction. So I clearly have no crystal ball, but it's the trend that I've seen over being very involved in the MLS industry over the last 10, 15 years. I just think it's inevitable. I think you have too many players in the field that are changing the way it works, and MLS portals are not pretty enough sometimes for clients maybe, or the MLS apps we all have are perhaps clunkier than Zillow, so we log on to Zillow to look for properties. I mean, I just think that things are going to be very different. I think that Clear Cooperation may have hurt the MLSs versus helped. I know they thought it would help continue the flow of listing data into the MLSs, where I would still argue is the best place for your data. It's helping provide a fair market for consumers. It's a great marketplace, and it's one of our biggest tools and assets we have as a realtor. So I actually believe they should stay around. I'm just not certain they will, because I think things fracture off and we all go find other resources. So I hope Clear Cooperation does not speed the death up of the MLS as we know it. Time will tell on that. I'm afraid it will hurt it though.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so with all that in play, everything you just mentioned and then some is coming up, not just upstream. Then you have realist. I mean, you have all these different players that are changing things daily, and nobody knows which way to go. Miami just changed over their whole single sign-on process and went with Remind, which was just a vendor for data for realtors just a few short years ago. So I think it's all going to look very different. And it just goes along hand in hand with the fact that we are changing and becoming a more instant reaction society. And what does that look like for us? And I think our technology will go that way as well.
Yeah. And you look at the MLS truly is the designation of co-broking or cooperation with co-broke on commission fees and that sort of thing. And so if you start to envision some of this backing out or the growth of regional MLS or statewide MLSs, however they go, now we got people, for me being Wilmington, just using an example, coming to Asheville to sell a house, which I know nothing about, right? It just allows for that opportunity too. So I agree. I think it's something that whichever stance that you personally feel strongly about, go and investigate it and see what's going on in your local area, because it is, I agree. I mean, especially like you say with Zillow, will Zillow eventually have their own MLS? Will Upstream eventually come out with something? Like you said, just with Remind, it's like it was just more of a data parsing system for so many years. And so, yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. So what are some additional things? I know you mentioned the COVID funding and that sort of thing that NAR is working as additional benefits to members, or even have as additional benefits for members. And I think as a member of NAR and NCAR, I'm not always aware of other services that are offered by NAR. So what were some of those other services that some of our listeners could look into that are offered?
So just Google Right Tools right now. Right Tools right now. And it'll take you to the appropriate page on NAR. All those tools were associated with a cost, and now they're basically free or at a heavy discount. I would encourage you to go click on every one of those links and see if they can help you build you or your business. So that'd be number one. And you also have a bunch of resources to reach out to. You even have things like telemedicine. I mean, NAR really stepped out on a limb a couple months ago. I know, because we voted to pass it, right? And it was an interesting conversation and a huge hit to the NAR budget. But they went and supported telemedicine for members for a couple months. It's just one more way to help your membership. And when you start thinking about what your dues are versus what you get, well, it makes a big difference. And North Carolina is no different. They have their pages of resources for you to go to, free educational opportunities, but really resources on bettering your business and surviving COVID. Those are the two things that I see people gaining the most value from right now. And I encourage you going to them and making sure you don't miss any of it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. There's always been those resources or a level of resources. It's just continuing to have awareness around what's being offered from a national level, and not wondering if just not even knowing, from rental cars to hotels to
most people don't know.
Yeah, they don't. So what do you see as the greatest responsibilities realtors have in ensuring that we are protecting the consumer?
The greatest responsibility?
Yeah. So,
wow. I almost look at clients as how you would treat your child. I mean, if you have one. Everyone who does knows what I mean. And I just believe you carry yourself that way, right? The golden rules, whatever you want to call it. I think we're governed by that. So I think that's an extremely big burden, responsibility, and honor we all have. We are, for the most part, at any rate, helping people with their largest and most important investment in their life. I think that comes with immense responsibility. So the most important thing, I don't even know where to begin other than protect their rights at all costs. And that doesn't always mean selling them real estate. That's one of the reasons why I'm involved and engaged at a local, state, and national level, politically, in the organizations, you name it, because I want to know that people are protected legally. I want to know that we all still have tax write-offs for our property taxes and our mortgage interest. I want to make sure that the communities that I serve in are getting appropriate funding for infrastructure and commercial growth grants, and you name it, right? And I think that's all part of our responsibility as realtors. Mm-hmm. We don't just hop from property to property that we broker. Our job doesn't stop there. It continues. And so I really think that's the most important thing that we all have to focus on and remember. Our job is building the communities that we serve. Mm-hmm. And how do we go about doing that? It's different for everyone.
Getting involved. Well, and I like too, when we were talking on our call earlier this week, you were saying, sharing a little bit about how oftentimes you find people or realtors as a whole underestimate the value that they bring to someone else. Like you said, with it's their greatest asset. It's helping them get from point A to point B, and it's not just about the next deal and flipping it. Like, housing is a human right, and sometimes we underestimate that value that we actually bring to those people, and sometimes allow ourselves to get too busy to play all in with each person, and so making sure that we're continuing to drive that value to our people. So I thought that was a really great point that you made earlier this week. What do you think agents and brokerages need to hear to continue to be successful?
Well, listen, pay attention to the changes that are coming and the changes that are coming in consumers, because they are changing. And there are data points out there for that, believe it or not. There are predictive analytics out there that could basically tell you everything, whether we like it or not, about each other, if you pay attention to it. And I would say that that's something that they should be doing right now. Looking into it, investing into how to move forward. I mean, I think I am, right? And my company is, and I think everyone should do that. So I think that's key and that's important. But I also think they need to reinvest in telling their story. I think telling their story better is going to go a long way. Telling not just who you are, but tell the story of the properties you market and the families you've served and how you're serving your community and what is going on and available for people in your community right now. I mean, remember, again, our job is not just one property to one property. It's building the communities that we're in, whether you're in residential, commercial, or property management. It's all the same. We all make a massive investment into where we are. And so that's what I would challenge everyone to do right now. Do a better job of. Tell your story. Tell why you matter and are important, and your services matter and are important. Because if you don't, you're going to let someone else write that narrative, and it's not going to be favorable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I know I've kept Bill quiet for, it looks like, about 33 minutes, which is pretty remarkable. For those of you that know Bill, he even had to turn his camera off to keep himself from jumping in on it. So Bill, I'll come to you. What questions do you have for Maren?
Well, I think there was an over-under bet on how long we would go before I actually said anything. So I really enjoyed listening to you ladies talk through that. I really only have one question. So I'm going to preface it with sort of the header of leadership and let you chew on that for a second, Maren. I know you run a very successful brokerage firm. You are clearly running the the North Carolina Association of Realtors, and I'm sure sit on a number of committees or subcommittees. And most of the folks who are watching this video either lead teams or lead firms or lead families or some combination thereof. So I'm interested to know what might be one or two leadership lessons that you have seen emerge from this past 2 to 3 months, or that you personally have implemented that you think the listeners could benefit from.
Be authentic. If nothing else, if Zoom humility has not given us that, right? But truthfully, be authentic, because what people need more than ever, really now, is knowing you understand, you're empathetic, you're in the same boat, and how you're going to cope with it. And that matters. That's extremely important in any leadership role you're in, as a leader of your home, as a leader of your PTA, your HOA, you know, your sign up softball team that hasn't been able to get together. I mean, anything at all that you're involved in, we all take a leadership role in it. And I think that we all need to make sure that it is authentically you, because that's actually how you'll make the most impact.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Thank you for that. Well, that was it. Debbie, back to you to wrap us up then.
Sure. Yeah, I came up with one more additional question. For those people out there and those listeners that aren't involved in the governmental side or even just the informative side of their board, what would you say some first steps could be, keeping in mind that some of our agents are top agents in the industry and are limited in time? What are some areas that they could actually get involved and make a difference?
Well, you'd be surprised. As a top producer, and I've turned myself over 20 million a year consistently, so I understand time is limited. But I can tell you, getting involved is not a big time suck like you think it may be. So I always want to encourage people to understand that I came from that boat. I'm still in it. I wear many hats, and I do it as a single parent. And I'm telling you, it's doable. But with that, get involved anywhere where your passion is. Your local, state, and national associations all have places to do that. But I would tell you at first, probably start at the local level, because you just know more people there, plain and simple. And pick a topic that you really care about. Some people care about governance. Some people really care about education. Some people care about the housing foundations and the not-for-profits and giving back in that regard, right? Some people care about the math and science of it all and want to be in the MLS. There are countless opportunities. Your local associations, some of them have 20 plus committees that you can get involved in and serve on. And so that's where I'd start. And I've asked someone that you know is involved. If you can't go find it on their website easily enough, and pick your passion and make the click when they're making committee selections to choose the ones you like, just reach out and ask someone who's involved. I would hazard a guess everyone knows at least one person that is involved, that you oftentimes walk by and tell them, gosh, I don't know how you have time to do all that. Well, they will help. They will help put you in the right place and get you to the right people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is like, speaking from, I say only serving on the board for 4 years, you know, it is a commitment. And like you said, there are other places within the local organizations that are minimal commitments, and you stay in the know. And I think when I think back to my 4 years on the board, that was the one thing that I truly took away from that experience, is always being in the know. Not always that I could share what I knew, but it gave me the opportunity to have a voice. It gave me the opportunity to be aware of what was coming up. At the time too, I was running a large brokerage. And so for me, it helped me position my people to win, even in like the clear cooperation, like to have the knowledge to go position them to win. Coming back and saying, here's some changes that we're seeing in the industry, position to win. And if you're not running a brokerage, you're running a business, I think just being in the know of a lot of that stuff is hugely beneficial. So, you know, although for where I was a little bit more of a time commitment than some will have to make, and there are positions that are more of a time commitment, at the same time, it was hugely rewarding to see all of the things that go into making sure that your local associations are leading, that you're growing, that your members are informed, that the public is protected, because ultimately that's what it's about too. So consumer protection. So definitely a great experience, and you're definitely a leading role model here in North Carolina. So we're happy to have you at the helm, and know that you have a very busy week. So I just want to thank you again for your time and for sharing your insight with our listeners, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the near future.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to chat with you guys. It was a pleasure.
Great seeing you, Maren. Thanks.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day.
Thanks.